Here we are, discussing the final film of the Cinequest festivities, the closing night event, The Friend. Let's get into it. So The Friend is based on a novel by Sigrid Nunes, directed by Scott McGehee and David Siegel. I knew nothing about this movie going in, only that Bill Murray and Naomi Watts were going to be in it. And I was going to go anyway because I typically go to the closing event. If I don't do anything else, I always catch opening and closing. And this happened to be the closing event movie. And decided, I was going to go check it out. Now, I thought it seemed to me this was going to be a Lost in Translation type of movie. Very indie feel, much more thoughtful, and that Bill Murray would be leading, and we would see what that ride was going to be like. So I was right in that it feels independent, but it's no less weighty and no less powerful. It has some weight. It's not too heavy. Some of the weight comes from just themes of like depression and suicide and grief, loss. But the movie is light enough that the audience isn't sort of weighed down by that. Although I'll say that it probably will depend on your experience as a viewer, what you come to the table with. And I say that because this movie actually is about a woman and her relationship with a Great Dane. That's the heart of the movie. That's really the through line in this movie. We're led into this relationship through the themes of friendship and love. This movie is about a writer, Iris, played by Naomi Watts, and she's really good friends, really close friends with Bill Murray's character, Walter, who also a writer, but was also her mentor and one-time lover. So they have a rich dynamic. But the crux of the relationship is not so much about romantic partnership. They had a real friendship, and I thought that was really cool. So the movie is called The Friend, and it's appropriate in that way, but it also works for the Great Dane, Apollo. That was Walter's dog. And somehow Iris inherits this dog. And we've seen this movie before in that it's about a relationship that doesn't go smoothly at first. You get a dog, and Iris is not a person who likes dogs. She doesn't like dogs. And yet she has to try to find a way to coexist with this dog for a while anyway. You know how that story ends. It's really, the relationship is rough at first, and then but also Apollo as a character in this movie, and he's quite substantial in terms of his presence. It's a big dog. It was moving to see because the two, they grow on each other, and they begin to form a genuine bond, and it's really sweet to watch. As a former dog owner who just recently had it wasn't my dog, but I loved this dog. This movie hit particularly hard for me. Again, like I said, it's not a heavy movie, particularly. It's a pretty sweet, it's saccharine. It's not quite formulaic, but it is in the sense that all movies about pets can be formulaic. And so in that way, it's formulaic. But if you own a dog or you've owned dogs before, this is going to really get you. It got me. I recently lost a dog that I loved. I saw this movie like right after, like not long after. So it was pretty raw for me. The other thing about it that really hit me was this is really about a group of writers. Bill Murray's character is a writer. Naomi Watts is a writer. Bill Murray's character has a daughter who's also a writer. And then you see a lot of scenes with people talking about their writing, students talking about their writing. So that hits me as a writer myself, and who's Naomi Watts' character is struggling with a book. I'm also struggling with another with a book right now. Some of you know I have a few books that I've written. My current book is written, but I'm struggling with it, and so I feel like I was right there in this hit me at the right time, in terms of where I am sort of mentally and where I am in sort of my spirit when it comes to the things that come up in this movie, particularly around friendship and love and loss, and what that looks like when you have a relationship with someone that isn't necessarily sexual. Both Iris's relationship with Apollo, the dog, and Iris's relationship with Walter, the crux of it is that they have genuine relationships. Yes, at one point, she may have had a sexual relationship with Walter, but beyond that, she has a real friendship with him. And that's the meat. And she forms a friendship, a deep friendship with Apollo, Walter's dog. And that's I've mentioned this before. It's so weird, the movies that I've seen this season at Cinequest, and how at least one or two of them really dealt with, there's this element, regardless if there's love or romance in it, there's an element of friendship there that I think is really important. Because I think for a lot of us, we've been so conditioned in a lot of the media, a lot of movies and TV shows focus on the importance of romantic love and how that's sort of the be all end all of all relationships, whatever it is. And we see some stories about families and different things and why that's important as well. But friendship, and then more importantly, the loss of certain friendships, it's not often discussed, like the breakups of that, or the sort of figurative, the deaths of that, and the toll that takes. That's just as meaningful as any romantic. I personally think, this is my experience, and my belief is that not every friendship is like this, but you'll have a few friendships in life that hold significant weight, that are on par with the deepest relationships you might have in life. And this movie deals with that. I loved that about this movie because I don't see it a lot. And so there's a lot of feeling and things there. And I think the other thing, just coming from a writer's perspective, a lot of writers are feely people. You know, I know myself as I can be feely, emotionally like type stuff. There's a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings jumping off all the time. And I have writer friends who in their way express things similarly. So it was really weird to watch this movie and see that dynamic play out when it comes to the other relationships in your life, whether it's other people or pets or whatever it is. It was because I felt like it was something that I was already living. So it's just like I went to a movie and got to see the continuation of other things that I was already feeling. So acting. I thought Bill Murray was going to be leading this movie. I was wrong. Naomi Watts is the star of the show. And I've always liked Naomi Watts. She's amazing. If you've seen her in The Impossible, it's an amazing movie. Tom Holland gets a lot of credit. He should, because he's fantastic in the movie. But Naomi Watts also is very good. I also loved her. Say what you will about Peter Jackson's King Kong, but I actually really appreciate that movie. And I loved Naomi Watts in that movie. She was fantastic, and she's great here. This is a performance that is down to earth, very real, and believable in how Iris processes, how she's dealing with grief and the complicated feelings that come up with her relationship with Walter and the other women in Walter's life, his ex-wives, for instance. Some of them become friends of hers, and there's sort of something you have to dance around with that. But the way Watts plays it feels very real and not forced. None of it feels forced, and it's great. It's like you're getting a peek into different days in her life, and it feels real. Carla Gugino is also in this movie. I love her and everything. She plays one of Walter's ex-wives, who is friends with Iris, and she's great. She's not around a lot, but this is another thing I appreciate in movies when they show it. Yes, this relationship grew out of they have a man in common, but they work through they form a genuine bond, and they're like real friends, and it's cool to see them interact. And Gugino, she's good. She's solid enough. Bill Murray, I think, is probably the only other person I think who deserves a little bit of shine. He's mostly in the background in this movie, but he plays a guy that you might have seen him play before, like in Groundhog Day, or frankly, Peter Venkman is another one of those characters who's like, he's kind of like the horn dog. He's the guy who is sweet on a lot of different girls, a lot of women. You know, he's always making googly eyes at or whatever. So in a lot of ways, Walter is this guy, but with another layer of like added intellectualism that's different from Dr. Venkman or someone else he might have played that who's intelligent. He was also a writer, and he's got multiple ex-wives in this movie. Funnily enough, though, Iris was not an ex-wife. She was a fling, but it's Iris and then like multiple ex-wives and then the dynamics that come up with that. And then so you have to sort of now sort out what his deal is, if you care to. There's not a lot to sort out with him. The movie doesn't really give us a ton of rich backstory. There's a mention about some possible misconduct for Walter. Walter was a professor at a university, whatever it is, and so that may have sort of that have come up. The movie doesn't dwell on that. It hints at it. It references it, but there's not really a lot that we get around that. But what I will say is different about this character, that there's something that there's a bit of a buoyancy, like a lightness that I haven't really seen from Bill Murray. Well, outside of like Bob from What About Bob, which is a fantastic comedy. I need to watch it again. I haven't seen it in years. If you've seen What About Bob, let me know. If you haven't, you should see it because Bill Murray is hilarious in that movie. And he's light and bright. And that's the only thing I can remember of like, oh, it's another thing I've seen him play that's kind of light. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Apollo, whose name is Bing, I think, in real life. But the dog Apollo is a massive Great Dane, and he's such a powerhouse of a presence. And I was amazed by how his trainers must have handled him because the dog just seems well-trained. He's not very vocal. There's a calm about the dog. He's very expressive without a lot of movement, but silently. It's so interesting. The dog was great. And something about the dog not being as hyperactive adds to the experience as a viewer. There's a lot of space for, in the silence, for us to feel stuff. I left this movie very emotional for a long time. And I definitely would recommend this movie. If you look around, you'll see it has pretty stellar reviews, and for good reason. It's a good movie. The way it depicts the relationships, it's just really good. It makes me, I got to find the book now. I want to read the book. And also the way it depicts New York is really cool. It feels like, it's a proper New York situation. And amidst all the chaos of the city, at the heart, you have this really, emotional story that is intimate, but it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. Look for it. The Friend. It is out right now. That's going to do it for this round of Cinequest coverage. Stay tuned. More videos on the way. I got to get out of here. But thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.